some of just a couple highlights from our iNaturalist projects as of May 2024. This is the leaderboard. We are recognizing that we have collectively, so far this year, 1,084 observations. So that's individual fungi pictured and put up on iNaturalist. And identified at least as fungi. You are allowed to do that. Just if you don't even know where to begin, you can put up your observation and label it fungi, and it will go onto the project as long as you've joined it. So within those, however, 1,084 observations, we have 328 species. So a pretty common question is, how many species of fungi are there in the state of Wisconsin? Start from this current slide. So we are at, as I was saying, 328 species. And as I was saying, pretty common question in the state of Wisconsin, how many species are there? Definitely more than 328, because this has just been us recording from January to May of this year. Our project is also inclusive of things some of us observe when we're, say, on vacation, visiting family, and all those sorts of other things. So there's a couple things that might be in there that are not Wisconsin species, but on the whole, that's what that is. Using iNaturalist tools to look at all the fungi in the state of Wisconsin and look at a list of those species can be a really cool way to get a sense of what species are in Wisconsin if you don't have an expert on hand like Tavis or Patrick to talk to about it and give you an estimate. So also within our project, we have 107 people who have helped us identify things to species so far, and 37 people of the total of 64 people in the project who have actually observed something so far this year. Of that, we have top 5 observers. Number 1 right now is Matt Weltner. I have a sense that Matt has like a goal for himself to get out and take at least one observation of a fungus every day, because that's about what he's been doing. He has racked up 485 observations, and of those, they've been identified to 168 species. So the discrepancy in that number is because not everything that you observe is going to be identifiable to species. Sometimes you took the picture from just one angle and it's just not good enough. Sometimes you find out, oh, this is something that can't get any better than genus unless you did microscopy, and maybe you didn't, to usually look at the spores. So number 2 on our top observers is Jack Johnson, who for some reason on his iNaturalist username is just his name, but with 2 N's. But he's at, as you can see it there, 109 observations and 44 species. Number 3 is Jeremy Hooper, Sloth Power, 99 observations, 43 species. Brennan Sternad at 4 for 92 observations, 34 species. Jeff Steele, 80 observations, 48 species. I would also like to recognize our top 5 identifiers, because you can see over there that we have about 1/4 of our total observations identified by at least 2 people, which is what research grade means. If it's identified by at least 2 people to species, or they agreed that it's not able to go any further than, say, genus. Of those people who weren't already mentioned as top 5 observers, we have Ariel Bronkowski at 61 observations identified. She's on there quite a lot, which we really appreciate her. And she runs her own mushroom events up in kind of like northern Minnesota near Wisconsin.
It's Bonkowski and not Bonkowski?
I can't hear the difference. I mean, I heard you say 2 different. I literally can't hear the difference. That's why I'm saying it wrong.
I'm just here for a few minutes. I've got a NAMA meeting, unfortunately, so I'll have to watch Mike on the YouTuber.
Yeah, well, okay, maybe
Mariah.
I'll get on to the observations so you can comment on them, Tavis.
I'll help when I can.
The word cow does not appear in Ariel's last name. It's not Bonkowski, it's Bonkowski.
You know what? I'm gonna have to practice it with you later. This is once again, it's like we'll also do Shagamin on Nicolay National Forest a couple times until I get it.
Schwamigan?
Yeah, that's it. Schwamigan. Okay.
Perfect.
I will get it wrong next time I say it, but we will work on that. Okay, so Dylan Taylor was 3. Somebody named Chicken of the Woods, great name, was 4, and then I'm 5. So recognizing myself before moving on after that embarrassment. Top species identified, observed, and identified. So like this is pretty expected list. It's things people see and that they know well enough to get the species. Ceropora squamosus are pheasant backs. Milk-tooth polypore, Gyromitra brunea. I don't know if it has a common name, but I call it the big chunk of the woods now. To add another of the woods name to our roster. Okay, so Schizophilum commune, splitgill.
Gyromitra brunea has the common name elephant ears.
Oh, really? That's fun. I'll add that. I like that better than what I came up with. They're just big and pretty dense. That's why I called them that. So just highlighting for anybody who does not know how to identify this species, this is a good one to know, although Tavis hates eating it. Some people like it. What you want is more like what Lacey Lay in our project identified on the left there, which is like the buttons, where they're all tender. If you're seeing something more like what Chrissy saw over here, with the like big, leafed out and the pores are probably big and it's woody. That's not good eating anymore unless you were somewhat desperate and wanted to make soup stock. So that's number 1. Number 3, apparently called elephant ears, which I can definitely see. And I'm also interested in your comments, Tavis, about this one by Kevin Cole. I guess still say Gyromitra brunea, but you see how it actually has the brain-like folds as well?
I'm still going to call that brunea. I just think that's a weird morph, maybe due to the stress of having to grow around that log. But typically with Gyromitra, if you cut a strip of it and lay it flat, if you're looking at Gyromitra venenata, there'll be flat spots between the wrinkles where something like Corfii or brunea is continually wrinkly, if that makes sense.
Like if I put my finger on it, or if I were an ant going across
so
it, it would be like a rise
on this
instead of
example
like
here on the left side of the screen where it's got that almost that veiny wrinkliness to it. If you were to cut that into a strip, you would see those flat spots, but that's atypical for brunea and Corfii or anything else that we could potentially have in the Gigas group. The ones with the flat spots between, I mean, it's like a reverse plateau. I don't know what you would call that. That is a characteristic of venenata.
Okay. It's definitely one of those things where those descriptions definitely help, and then you're going to want to handle a mushroom while thinking about it until it really clicks. But my other question is actually, I know we've talked about this before, but people are always asking me, okay, I've heard Gyromitra causes lots of poisonings. But I've also heard that Gyromitra brunea is one of the safe ones. How safe are we talking?
I've eaten it twice in the last week.
Okay.
I'm still doing all right. Yeah,
but
it's actually very good. People rave about it. I don't think it's like exceedingly good. It's very good.
Okay, so I mean, I've had a lot of people also say to me, not worth it if you because they don't really know what they're looking at. And I think that would be fair to say. If you do not feel confident in identifying between the different Gyromitra species,
yeah, definitely pass on them if you're not confident. And another thing is too, don't push your sense of adventure on other people.
Yes, that is a really good, I think, aphorism for us to hold in mind. So you might try some, and always trying a new mushroom, try just a little bit well cooked. But if you're, don't like serve it to other people. This is not approved for restaurants. That's what we might say about it. I also included this observation on the right there by Jen Stevenson, not only to show kind of more what Gyromitra brunea most commonly looks like, where we see more of those elephant ear shapes and none of that wrinkly vein stuff. But you can also see it's kind of, I think we would call it a pseudostipe because it's not a real stipe. But that kind of stem-shaped thing there.
It's a real stipe, though.
It's a real stipe. It doesn't not count because it's an ascomycete.
Well, it doesn't have any fertile tissue to it like a pseudostype on, say, pleurotus would have.
Hmm.
It's sterile tissue, designed to elevate, so we'd call it a stipe.
Okay, I'm glad to know that. Um, so any sterile tissue to elevate is a stipe. So if I found spores forming on that tissue, now it's not a stipe.
Yeah, I mean that's it's not a perfect definition, but if you look at something like an oyster, anything in pleurotus that has that, well, some pleurotus have a defined stipe, but that pseudostipe where the gills are still running down all the way to where it's attached to the wood, that's a pseudostipe. It's just thicker tissue there to offer some structure to support the weight of the mushroom, but it's still a fertile surface. It's still a hymeneum.
Okay.
This is not. But then if you look at something like Lycoperdon or Calvatia that has sterile tissue to elevate the gleba up, I would call that a pseudostipe as well.
Okay,
It's
so
not
because it's
it's
a
not
puffball,
defined. It's kind of all encased in the same
yeah, it's
helical.
kind of like if on the light bulb shape, it's just the bottom of the light bulb. It's not even a separate tissue. Whereas there
Right,
are
right.
kind of like a cutoff between the brown tissue up there and the white tissue down there. They're
Definitely
actually like
so.
whole different tissues going on there.
Yep.
The mushroom was using different DNA bits to make each part. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So these are very hefty. That's why, like, I was holding some at the foray we had last weekend, and I was like, oh, if I had a basket full of these, I would be getting a workout. That would be more than I usually would. Not saying much there, but they're heavy.
I
Which is
put a big
another. Go
I put a
ahead.
picture of one up on iNaturalist yesterday.
Oh yeah.
That really shows the vertical seam that they can have.
Okay, we'll have to go to that after I get through the last slide here. I don't have too many. I was just also highlighting most faves so far in the project. So faving an observation is something where you like hit this little star thing. It's kind of one of the social things you can do on the site if you're on the desktop version of the site. And it's also a good way to save things that you want to go back and look at. I oftentimes fave things that I genuinely am praising, like the photography or the observation, or it's something rare. But sometimes I also fave it because I want to go back and identify it. And then I'll remove my fave, not because I dislike the person, but you know. Any case, that etiquette aside, we have that Calipatella. This is me mispronouncing things. Calipatella campanula. Bell hoodie, which is fun. And that's the one that Brennan, we talked about it last time. He's been cultivating it. Like he collected it out of the woods, put it in a little chamber. We could call it our mycological zoo exhibit, a mycu, and continued to give it moisture, and it had more stuff to eat, so it eventually fruited again in captivity. And a lot of people thought that was cool, so that got that favorites. We also have the Sarcosypha cups, which are a big favorite in springtime. And you can see some of these other things if you go to the project and look at them. But I was going to zone in on this because it wasn't identified to species, and I thought we might talk about these sorts of little cuppy things that we see in the woods, and also highlight the use of microscopy. So this is an observation to genus Orbilia um, by Jack Johnson, and he saw it in the La Crosse area and took a number of photographs. I have like the photographs of the spores to go to next. But we can see it's just these tiny little translucent cups, which is pretty characteristic of this genus. Here's the spores. I also wanted to highlight kind of like when you see that mess at the side of like somebody describing the spores. Um, I feel like right now I don't have a measuring thing in my microscope, so I'm not yet able to get dimensions this specific. So instead, you sort of look at the shape and say spore cylindrical and maybe give a general idea of the size. But he's been able to measure everything here, which maybe will allow him to get to genus.
You're
Hmm.
only going to get the genus on Orbilia.
Really? There's no
Yeah,
hope.
there's not very good information on it. I've got the two-part monograph of the Orbiliomycetes. We can go through it, but I don't think you're going to find an answer better than Orbilia sp.
Mm. So these would probably be very good ones for us to voucher, as in collect scientifically, so that someday somebody can name more species and name them more rigorously out of the collections.
I've got two in my herbarium here, Orbilia. They are probably different.
Mm-hmm.
One's a little bit yellower and larger, not yellow though, like Bisporella, and the other one's a really thin white disc like this. And all I can come up with is Orbilia for both of them.
Okay.
And they're tiny, like a millimeter.
Yeah, these seem quite small to me.
Yeah, they're small. Yeah, yeah.
You're more going to
Orbilia.
notice them coating a surface than you are going to notice the individuals.
One to talk to on that would be actually Andrew Kitson. He might have a little bit on that. Or maybe Brennan might know something more about Orbilia, but that's as far as I can help you with. That's the genus, and that's where it ends.
Okay, well, that's the end of my PowerPoint, but I can go to iNaturalist itself. And are you okay with me searching up your Gyrometra observation,
Yeah.
Davis? Okay. That is a very nice photo. And it also does show just the little bits of that wrinkle, but you're saying like if I cut it, I would see a continuation of it as though it was my skin with like a vein on my hand or something. Not
Right. More like the surface of a lake versus the surface of land.
okay. I'm gonna actually pull up in a different tab. We're looking at Gyrometra venenata.
I put a few of those up this week too.
Okay. Yeah, there's yours are. Oh, so they're also, yeah. So ignoring the color. This, I don't know why it won't let me zoom in more. I bet I could get it to go. There we go. Because I want to look at, well, now it's, I guess this is almost kind of getting it on the screen. Sorry, technical difficulties here. In any case, you can kind of see, I guess, this cross section too. So looking at those, not only are they more profuse, like there's lots of them compared to this. We have this lighter color. And that when the veining occurs, it's occurring in the context of this elephant ear shape still being present. We're
Yeah,
not
the
getting just
key
this.
feature for Brunet is those vertical seams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2 to 3 of those where the lobes come together, giving it that saddle shape.
Yes. And if a person were curious about, we're zoomed in. What do people mistake Brunea for in the field? We can go to, so I just clicked on the name to get here to the species page. We can go to the similar species. So people mistake it for this one, which is a bad mistake if you think you're eating it. People mistake it for Corfii, which is not too bad because it's also considered one of the safer ones. Infula. I also wouldn't eat that. I mean, I probably just won't eat Gyrometra and this isn't going to be in our area, I don't think. We can look at the map. It's for anybody who hasn't seen it, a link to a great presentation on gyrometric toxicity, which I would definitely recommend. Oh, it's by Eldon Dirks. That's great. We'll have to share this. But in any case, I think that's a wonderful to have that reflection because I think we don't want to spread mycophobia about species that are safe, but we also don't want to over advertise the edibility of things that really aren't beginner's mushrooms. So that balance. Anyway, I was going to say, Melissa, would you like to introduce our speaker? Also, welcome everyone.
Yes, I would. But there is kind of a history here. So, Mike actually came to us a couple years back and said, you know, I'm trying to get like more information about cultivating morels. And I'm thinking about trying to like get a grant for this and stuff. And we were like, oh, that sounds extremely interesting. So we sort of partnered with him to try to, you know, help him like learn more about this and get like more deep into it. And I mean, Mushroom Mike is his business name, but you know, his actual name is Mike Jozwik. And he's been an integral part of like the whole upper Midwest food system for a long time. He delivers, you know, like massive amounts of mushrooms, distributing to our local area, but also nationally. So, you know, within the community, many people know Mike as Mushroom Mike. Um, and he's also a distributor of wild forage goods, cultivated mushrooms, truffles, sweet lacoche. He's actually cultivating wheat lacoche now, which is amazing. So we're really impressed with like his business sense and his cultivation and his mushroom knowledge. He's a small locally owned family business that's operated by him and his wife, Jenna, and his father, Larry Jozwik. Yeah, Mike has been, like I said, a part of the community, and we're really happy to have him. He got Wisconsin certified actually just recently in one of our classes. And without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and pass it off to Mike, and he can start his sharing screen and stuff. And we're happy to have you, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much as well. Okay, we're gonna just start off right from here. As I am very grateful to be able to present from you guys. We have been partners for a very long time in both just research as well as um, uh, the fungi fair, years going back with Mushroom Mike LLC as well as the Wisconsin Mycological Society. So very much appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak in front of you guys. This is one of hopefully 3 seminar series regarding mushroom cultivation, specifically tailored towards cultivated morels. So we applied for a grant, multiple grants actually, for this project. I've followed morel cultivation since its genesis back in the day and was just hyper obsessed with trying to get a grant for this. So I'm glad this worked out. We're partnering with Wisconsin Mycological Society as well as numerous other universities, soil testing, the state, to kind of get this ball rolling and bringing this more to a Midwest context, as you will see that this has been quite prevalent around the rest of the United States. So we are a family-owned business. You can see my lovely little daughters there. My father. We're a family-owned business based out of Magwanago, Wisconsin. Now we just built a brand new facility in North Prairie, Wisconsin. We specialize in roughly 250 different products, mushrooms, forage goods. We're predominantly known for wheat lacoche right now. We just had our claim to fame of 15 seconds on Top Chef last night with one of the chefs using the wheat lacoche, which we were looking forward to. So we're very excited about that. But again, here's some of our wheat lacoche that I have been working on for a number of years. Hopefully this will be another future presentation that we can do for you guys. But we are going on to morels. Morels is kind of the final research project in my quest, I should say, of OCD and ADHD obsessiveness regarding trying to figure out problems in the mycological community and trying to bring these to the forefront and try to hopefully be able to solve some of these riddles and provide scenarios in which they might actually be viable in a Wisconsin context. So we came up with this. I'm an obsessive Lost fan, if you recognize the logo. The Morel Initiative is the next frontier of applied research, techniques, tactics, and experimentation in the cultivated mushroom community. I've researched since roughly 2007, every single ResearchGate article, every single Chinese article that's come out. We've read it. We've tried to understand and decipher the code of this. But I definitely want to do this little disclaimer real quick. With Morel Initiative, I am not a professional mycologist or never have claimed to be. I'm just a farmer, simply put, and I just have a desire to share this project with as many people as I can, because if we can get this to happen within the Wisconsin context, it's going to open a lot of new doors. And especially with the specifically towards this grant, this is tailored towards a specialty crop research grant to create a new kind of sub-industry within the mushroom cultivation industry of growing morels outside. And you'll see that we are going to talk heavily about growing morels inside as well. But specifically, since we have vast amount of agricultural properties in Wisconsin, I'm going to tailor most of my initiative towards cultivating outside. Subnote, all images, literary sources, and research links are contained within this presentation. This entire presentation, any research of mine, anything regarding this project, available 100% to you guys. Let me know, send me an email, I'll get you everything you guys need. Here's a little quick shot from our cooler if we can get this going. So here they are. This is what we are trying to grow. Oh. So here they are. This is what we are trying to grow. Straight from China. Here is a cultivated morel. Almost all standard and uniform in size. Extremely clean. You can see, very high quality. It's eerie how clean they are. It's eerie how uniform they are. I just don't even understand the sheer volume that is coming out of China at present. This year alone, I think it was upwards of 1 to 10 million metric tons of fresh morels that came out of China this year. Specifically this season, the Chinese morel season usually goes from early March and literally eerily stops exactly when our season starts, which is another opportunity for specialty crop management. And chefs were paying up to $38 a pound this year. And if they were exactly 4 inches in size, they would pay up to $42 a pound this year for Chinese morels. They all come in these perfectly packed, immaculate coolers like you'll see. Very quick. I know we have a lot of science nerds. I'm a science nerd. I got to cover the little bit of background in biology of morels. They're Ascomycetes. They spore very uniquely. They have an ascus, which is a special cell containing the spores, which is the common feature of all Ascomycetes. For the most part, this is what got me thinking a lot. For the most part of their life cycle, morels are saprobes or saprophytic, thus consuming decaying materials such as dead leaves or wood. Uniquely, though, they are also mycorrhizal, connecting to tree roots in a relationship benefiting both tree and fungus. This was kind of probably the genesis of every single type of wild to cultivated mushroom. How can we actually get this to work, especially with something as wildly mycorrhizal as the morels? You might recognize this from Mr. Volk's presentations if you still are on his pro boards. The life cycle of the morel basically starts germination to primary mycelia, sclerota, which then turns into secondary mycelium and then produces a fruiting body. A lot of science. This will come a little bit clearer with the pictures coming forward here. This is morels. The main question at this point is how? How do we replicate this environmental interaction and turn this, which is a sclerotia mat, as we call it, into this? The morels and pictures coming out of China are just it's staggering. It's so mind-boggling to see so many morels in one point. You almost want to have a seizure. It's just insane the volume that actually is coming out of China in terms of when you look at this picture versus how hard us Wisconsinites have to go into the woods to find a simple pound of morels. Um, I hope by now you have seen and have been transported from the realm of fake news into the realm of reality. This process has been done, it is being done, and it's going to continue being done and continue to being experimented on. Now we're going to transport back to the early days of morel cultivation. A lot of people have heard this story. It's a story of a simple man who came up with a process. This was actually out of Neogen, which was a Michigan-based company. They were the first patented successful commercial cultivation method for morels in 1981. Neogen was affiliated with Michigan State University, and at the time, a number of biotechnology patents. Neogen is still around to this day. Um, Orr was a professor. He came to East Lansing, Michigan to develop a new commercial process for growing morels. And in April of 1986, a patent was issued. But tragically, Ron Orr, again, one of the most interesting kind of unsolved mysteries of mycological lore, died and did not get to see the patent granted. There were rumors that he was murdered and that there was a oncoming deal with Domino's Pizza, actually. Um, it's just one of those absolutely weird stories. But the patent itself described a process of the formation of sclerotia that are competent and able to produce a fruiting body. Morel sclerotia do not normally form until the nutrients of a substrate have almost run out, so you're depriving the mushrooms of food. And one trick to forming large-scale sclerotia mats is to inoculate Morel mycelium onto a very nutrient-poor substrate, such as soil or topsoil. You're going to see pictures coming up here about this. And allow its limited nutrient reserves to reach a critical point, and then allow a flooding process, and then allow a nutrient introduction process. So this is kind of setting the stage for how this process came to be from this original patent. The patent itself, oh, let's go to the next one here. We're going to transport now to China. In 2000, two breakthroughs led to rapid development and advancements of cultivated mushrooms in China. The first was they successfully hybridized some species of black morel varieties to cause increased fruiting potential within a cultivated mushroom setting. That was definitely number one. The second one, and which is again another freak mycological story, is what's known as the exogenous nutritional bag, otherwise known as the ENB. This is by far the most critical and most interesting part of cultivating morels. It's basically a process of, if anyone is familiar with cultivating mushrooms, you basically take mushroom food, you normally would, and an agricultural byproduct, a lot of the times we use cottonseed hulls or wheat bran, and then pasteurize that within a bag setting before we introduce the mushroom spore to that food. Um, this actually, the exogenous nutritional bag is basically a empty bag, which was accidentally dropped on the ground in a greenhouse that was filled with exogenous nutrient bags that were already inoculated with Morel mycelium. This caused a very interesting reaction at a very critical point. Just like the golden oyster story within Wisconsin of how there was a fire in an Iowa cultivation facility which spread golden oyster mushrooms over to the Wisconsin border and then thus prolifically fruited all across the Mississippi River Valley. tells of a story of a researcher trying to do with this exact thing of morel cultivation, but accidentally dropping an empty bag on the soil. But then he noticed that there was an incredible fruiting process that happened around this bag. It triggered the sclerotia mat of the Morel mycelium to fruit prolifically. So again, along these colloquial lines, whether it's elata, eczema, sexulata, rufobrunea, importuna, every origin story comes down to the point that the Chinese cultivation industry of roughly hundreds of millions of dollars of state capital funded research was able to obtain a burn morel from the Pacific Northwest and possibly one from France to create their first original hybrid morel. You'll see these ads all over Facebook. If you go into the Morel cultivation books on Facebook, you'll see these kind of advertisements for literally hybrid 102, hybrid G8, hybrid T09. And these are all the different, it's basically like a Uline catalog of different types of morel species that you can order that have been hybridized and fine-tuned, much like the cannabis industry. But more frequently, I would say hybrids of importuna, eczema, and sexulata are primarily the #1 species that the Chinese have been cultivating. A little bit more background. I think we have all seen this picture as fungi fanatics in the New York Times articles in the last couple years of the Danish company fruiting morels inside. The Karsten twins, which are two elderly gentlemen and scientists from Copenhagen, dedicated their entire lives basically to trying to solve this exact same problem of growing morels, but within an indoor environment. They came up with their own hybrid, variant 304, for the Danish Morel project, which has been widely publicized and very successful. And you begin to see a trend of people that are successfully cultivating morels are creating and selectively harvesting hybrid variants in order to create a product that has increased potential for fruiting. So from Penn State to Dr. Benito at Michigan State University to the crews at gourmet mushroom facilities in both Michigan and San Francisco, far west fungi in California, the Karsten pirates, as I call them, in Denmark. The research is just continually ongoing. And here you can see an indoor cultivation operation using an exogenous nutritional bag in a tray setting, which is absolutely fantastic and very unique. You just, it's mind-boggling. So it's literally just morel mycelium infused into soil and then deprived of water and food, and then you introduce food to it in its later life cycle, and then all of a sudden you get something looking like this, which is incredible. Here are some of the Karsten twins. You see, I've collected just analogs of pictures of people's projects, and it all comes down to the same thing, some sort of topsoil that is infused with morel mycelium, and then nutrients are introduced at a later life cycle span. This is very interesting. This is from the Karsten Pirates out of Denmark, courtesy of Jamie Richardson, who is a truffle researcher in the eastern United States. She's friends with this gentleman. You can see he's also conducting these experiments in low hoop houses, which we are also going to be experimenting on site as well. But my history lesson is going to end at someone that's actually very much more local than Denmark. This gentleman, Blue's Best Mushrooms out of Iowa. I don't know if anyone has followed this gentleman. Very unique entrepreneur, local Midwesterner, and he is fruiting some absolutely incredible mushroom species and subvariants of Morchella in an outside context using E and B bags inside of low hoop houses. And again, he's doing this in March and in April, which we'll be discussing further in in the potential that this market has as a specialty crop. Oh, let's see if we can get this to work. I don't think we're not gonna get that link to work. I'll send you if you want to click on this link when you download a presentation later on. This link basically shows him preparing his fields outside and laying the exogenous nutritional bags on top of the soil in his low hoop houses. He's actually very successful in not only the Chinese hybrids, but also I've seen him fruiting which I very much presume to be a subvariant of our local Morels and extremely blonde. Um, so I have not confirmed that and have not been able to have dialogue with him, unfortunately, yet. But it's something that we're looking into. So we're going to go step by step now. We have had our history lesson. A lot of research has been done, early research in the 1980s leading into Chinese breakthroughs in the early 2000s to many local mushroom cultivators across the world trying to figure out more riddles of how to actually create large-scale successful fruitings of morels. All right. Again, me as a mushroom cultivator, I look to China and Korea and Japan for literally every single process within the mushroom cultivation industry. They are the leaders per capita. They consume more mushrooms than anyone else on the planet, and they developed the most ingenious tech, the most streamlined machinery, and we've imported all of our machinery for mushroom cultivation from China directly, and it just seems like if you're going to see breakthroughs within the industry, it's normally going to come out of Southeast Asia, China, as well as Japan and Korea. So here we go. There is an ingenious AI app for translating anything via visual scan. I've unfortunately don't have my Morel book that I ordered from China that basically was a literal walkthrough of this entire process. I have all of the scans as PDFs translated with attributing author's notes that can be available upon request as well. We're going to use both the Chinese operations as well as Blue's Best Mushrooms to kind of walk us through exactly the entire process of how Morel cultivation is done here. Translation, here we go. So you can see that the number one process is site preparation. We're going to have site preparation. We're going to have soil preparation. We're going to have the isolate selection like we talked about earlier. We're going to grow the mushrooms within a controlled environment to then inoculate the soil. We're going to place those mushrooms on the soil. We're going to cover those mushrooms with soil. We're going to tarp it. We're going to flood it. We're going to nutrient it, and then we're going to fruit it and harvest it. So I would say that among the variant selection, probably the number one thing, but field preparation is probably the number two thing. From everything that I've gleaned, you cannot have a site selection for growing morels outside with anything that has had past pesticide use, herbicide use within the last 5 years. You have to be extremely cognizant of rodents, weed management, and of course, as you see with any mushrooms within Wisconsin, slug management, because you're not going to invest all of this time and money into growing a mushroom outside and then have the crop incredibly destroyed by pests. So you can see that site selection, and with this video pre-interesting storm cell this morning, I took this video. Well, here's where the magic happens. This is the headquarters for Mushroom Mike LLC. We just prepped all the fields for wheat Lacoche. We're going to start planting our third plot here soon. But as you can see, right here behind the facility is where the Morel Initiative project will be taking place. We have our greenhouses yet to be unpacked. Those will be going up in July. And all of the fields right behind the building, so we can connect utilities, will be where the 3 greenhouses for this project will be going. So our site selection, we've literally been maintaining and have not been utilizing for almost since 2020, so 4 years now. We have not used anything within that context for growing any operations, no herbicide usage. Soil's been meticulously maintained. We've kept weed management down, constant mowing in site preparation for when this project actually finally happens. So we're ready for seeding. Here's a Chinese greenhouse. We have the soil prepared. We're tilling the soil. So this is where we are going to start doing our first initial experimentation. And 1 second break before my computer dies. I'm going to plug in my power. I apologize.
Well, Mike, this is fantastic so far. So I'm very, very excited to have you continue this. I think we're all on the edge of our seats about it. Any other comments while Mike is finding his plug?
Saving the day. There we go.
He's back.
Got my Afghan on. We're ready to go here. All right. So the number one thing is I've seen outside cultivation. If anyone's familiar with Field and Forest out of Peshtigo, Wisconsin, I started seeing what they're doing with their pre-inoculated blocks. They do a lot of outside maitake cultivation where they simply take the entire brick of inoculated mycelium, lay it on the ground, and cover it with wood chips. And that got me immediately thinking of, are the Chinese tilling this mycelium inoculated block into the soil, or are they simply laying blocks on top of the soil and covering them with soil? We've done and grown king trumpet mushrooms in a similar fashion inside in tubs where we basically lay blocks of inoculated mycelium for king trumpets, Pleurotus inigri, inside of basically cement mixing tubs, cover it with inoculated layer of lime, heavily lime treated peat moss, and the bricks fuse together basically like a brick wall. So the number one experiment that we're doing in one of 3 greenhouses is we are not going to be tilling it into the soil that we have been seeing that the Chinese have been doing in most of the videos, but we're actually going to lay the bricks down and do a gentle topsoil cover and see if the bricks fuse like many of the oyster mushroom experiments that we have done in past. The second greenhouse, we will be doing the traditional Chinese method that I've seen in numerous videos of them basically breaking that inoculated brick up. So here's one of the machines that we bought from China creates these bags. You can make them about 1,000 an hour. And that is an inoculated bag of wood pellets and an agricultural byproduct, pasteurized and then inoculated with Morel mycelium. And you'll see it kind of eat the food all the way. You can kind of see the bottom is still not eaten, but very small bags. That's the exact size that the Chinese use for their both exogenous nutrition bags as well as their mycelium for the actual morel cultivation as well. So we're going to lay those out like Lincoln logs all over the soil. In greenhouse 1, gently cover it. Then in greenhouse 2, we're going to break all of those apart and rototiller those in just like that. So you can see prolific fruiting. This is kind of alluding towards what we normally do with both oyster mushrooms as well as king trumpet mushrooms. And if you get all of these together and you take them out of the bags and you lay them together, you get this massive kind of uh, uh, I just constantly allude to how trees communicate through mycelium. They all interconnect together and it's like a charged fruiting environment where everything fruits at a synonymous time. So the next step in the process, you either lay the bricks down and then cover them with soil, or you till it into the soil and you have an incorporation of the mycelium as well as topsoil. But then we got to cover this. This is all done in fall. So morel cultivation is a two-step process. We do a step in fall, and then we fruit in the spring. So in fall, we get everything ready and tuck it in for winter, just like China is at a very similar latitude to Wisconsin. So basically, they do the same thing. They have a little bit earlier of a jump start, but that's also because they do it in greenhouses as well. So they basically take non-breathable mats or plastic and then cover the top of this soil that's already been inoculated. And you're going to see something very interesting happen as this mycelium that's been introduced to the soil, it starts to create sclerotia. This is Morel sclerotia. You start to see these very interesting knobs, little nuggets form all over the top of the soil. And in China they call it powdery mildew, which to a farmer in Wisconsin is something that you absolutely abhor because you think of your entire squash and pumpkin patch going to shit. So it's actually not powdery mildew. It's the sclerotia spreading throughout the soil and creating a mat. You can see specifically within this picture. I got it next here. It's wild looking. It's absolutely wild looking. That is all inoculated soil teeming to be triggered to fruit morels. So that's generally right in spring after the mats are removed. That's how white the inoculated soil will actually look. And you can see very interesting that they have drip irrigation here as well as foot channels for walking, but those foot channels also serve as flooding channels to further irrigate the inside of the greenhouses. In Blue's Best Mushrooms, very interestingly, exact same thing. You have it being, see, this is where I got the idea of laying the blocks and then gently covering them with soil, because I'm pretty sure that's the process that Blue's Best Mushroom has been experimenting with as well, in terms of not incorporating it or tilling it into the soil, but rather leaving the bricks whole and then covering it to get that sclerotia mat. So this is in Iowa. This is happening outside in Iowa. And then he'll cover these with small, probably about 2 foot high black hoop houses, curving with drip irrigation. The acreage of morel greenhouses is staggering. It's the top mushroom trip I'm going to be taking as soon as I'm able to get over there and see this actually in the works. But here we go. Here's in spring. You'll also sometimes see, to get even in brutal winters, they'll have almost a double hoop house effect where they'll have a hoop house within the greenhouse to further insulate the morels and the mycelial mats, so you're not going to get a hard pack freeze. You can see kind of the small low hoop house inside of the greenhouse sometimes too. But they pulled back the black fabric. You can see the sclerotia mat, and then you see them starting to lay the exogenous nutritional bags on the soil. I'm going to go back to the slide and explain this a little bit more. All right, so the exogenous nutritional bag, it's literally like you're feeding cake to someone. The mushrooms are waiting, they're starving, it's birthday, the kids are screaming, the mycelial's in the ground. The mycelium actually travels, they take the bag, the empty bag, they slit the bottom of the bag and lay the slit open on the soil. The mycelium will literally travel under the soil and go up into the bag, suck the nutrients out of the bag. I was trying to find the milkshake meme from that one There Will Be Blood for this, because it was so appropriate. Um they literally will milkshake all of the nutrients out of the bag, store it, and then immediately when you introduce water in spring, after you have that sclerotia mat formed, and you introduce this water and you lay the exogenous nutritional bags on it, you are going to get that absolute explosion of mushrooms that's going to happen here. So you'll see how, even in proximity, you'll see how many more mushrooms per acreage that you'll get exactly around the exogenous nutritional bags as well. So harvesting is in China, there are no labor laws, so you're going to see some very interesting videos on YouTube. This one I pulled a lot of videos off of. They're if these coolers don't look familiar, that's the exact cooler that was in my walk-in cooler that we received from China. Um, Everything is hand selected. Again, you're growing through soil. You're inside of a greenhouse. You are going to have a product that is so far superior to any burn morel that is normally imported and sold to chefs in the United States, that is so incredibly clean that chefs are willing to pay $10 a pound more for a clean product like these Chinese morels. That it's unexplainable, especially being a mushroom wholesaler trying to pitch a wild product versus this Chinese morel product. There's no comparison in the early season. They will hands down 9 out of 10 times take the Chinese morel because it's less work, because it's simply a clean, uniform product that's roughly 3 to 4 inches. You'll see that you can see him holding his fingers. Yes, it is a 3 to 4 inch cap. That is exactly what we're looking for. And if you look in my show notes right here, the average price of morels that are purchased and sold to the United States is $20 a kilogram from China. So that's roughly $33 to $40 to even $50 wholesale to restaurants in 2024 this season. So it's an incredible potential of a crop if we could get this working here. More so because this is all happening and very strategically happening in China during March and April, because we do not have a proliferation of Pacific Northwest morels coming from the West Coast to chefs within the Midwest, nor is our local season really starting yet. So the capitalization and the strategic timing of growing this crop is absolutely pinpoint accurate to providing something that chefs have historically always wanted in a product, the premium morel mushroom, incredibly clean and exactly in uniform size. For some reason, there was a YouTube and Instagram sensation this year of stuffing morels, and I could not sell a local morel in Chicago for roughly 8.5 weeks after this one Instagram reel went around of a French chef stuffing a perfect 4 inch Chinese morel. It was Chinese morels or no morels, and I'm talking thousands of pounds were sold off of one Instagram reel. So here we are in McGuanago. We're ready to continue this research on our farm and hopefully apply it to a Wisconsin context. This isn't meant to be just for mushroom cultivators. This is meant for the consumers as well. Are consumers in Wisconsin willing to accept a cultivated morel in the morel capital of the United States in Muscadet? Could you walk into Muscadet with a pound of cultivated morels and be able to pass them off? It'd be very interesting to see. I might experiment with that next year. We'll see. But we're looking to expand this knowledge base. Again, this is one of 3 presentations. We're hoping to present at Fungi Fair again this fall, as well as in next spring. So this is a continuation series meant to be an educational series. There is a survey at the end. If you can pretty please fill out this 6-question 2-minute survey from SurveyMonkey. I'd really appreciate it. It's all for grant details that they need to have residual feedback regarding these presentations. But there will be, this presentation is meant to generate interest. And I want people to get excited about this. I want people to see research potential within growing cultivated morels, specifically within Wisconsin, given the morel history and culture within Wisconsin. And we are going to select a limited number of people in fall to continue this on that may be interested in further doing this research to come to the farm. We're going to have a farm visit tour. You're going to see this actually happening on our farm. If you are interested, please reach out to either WMS or to me. We will make something happen in terms of a field trip. We have an incredible amount of grant dollars to spend on getting people interested. This is an educational grant. This is not a for-profit grant. This is meant to inspire as well as to kind of generate interest further in this crop. There's me in a 10-foot shipping container that cost way too much money. So that's actually where we steam all of our mushroom food. We created a hybridized boiler system to basically pump steam into there, and then that's what we're going to use to basically create the thousands of bags needed to go onto the soil. Um, that we'll be doing this fall to get the soil ready to create that exact process that we just talked about of the flooding, the sclerotia mat, and the mass fruiting in spring. So the research objectives that we are going to be doing on our farm, we're going to be experimenting with the multiple type of seeding, the bricks versus the tilling in. We're going to be literally my wife screaming at me this past weekend while we're trying to play bags at a beer garden. I'm literally talking to China to get those exact 3 hybrid strains imported into the United States. We've been going back and forth for over a month. We also have localized strains that we have cloned. We also have Pacific Northwest strains that we have cloned. We're going to be doing a hodgepodge between all 3 of the greenhouses in terms of different types of strains of mushrooms. We're going to experiment with the exogenous nutritional bag recipes. Within the scanned copy of the Chinese manual that I have, which is again available to you guys that didn't want to read it, they have the exact recipe that they use within China, heavy on the rice bran and rice byproducts, which I think could also translate to the cottonseed as well as soybean products that we have within Wisconsin context. And we're also going to monitor localized soil conditions because the number one thing that a lot of people worry about with Chinese morels is soil contamination. It's a valid, very valid context. And so we want to see exactly how our soil, before we even inoculate the soil, looks, how it looks after we inoculate it, and more so how it looks after we are done with this entire grant. The most heavily criticized of all the research papers that have happened here, Penn State just did a research project from 2000 to 2022. We just wrapped up with another upper Midwest one in Michigan, I believe Michigan State, with 5 to 7 cultivators. The number one thing is hours spent creating this project to happen, as well as um, the exogenous nutritional bags actually working within the Wisconsin and upper Midwest context. So again, a lot of more experimentation that needs to be had. Penn State did not, I don't want to say for certain, did not use Chinese hybrids versus localized strains. So there's a lot of different variables that are still meant to be explored here. The research obstacles are definitely pest management within a Wisconsin context, and more so for us, especially is the seasonal. These last 2 years have been insane. The seasonal extreme and unpredictable weathers, especially for timing for late season frost and freeze. The second to last thing is land rotation. So in China, massive acreage. They have a lot of land to work with. Wisconsin, we have a lot of land to work with. We can basically cultivate morels from all the research that I've understood for roughly 5 years on the same piece of property before it basically creates a zero-sum game and your harvest is depreciated. Um, and more so for reaching out on future research is finding available land in which pesticide has not been applied to it. That's the number one priority for being able to choose the land selection like we talked about. But the opportunities are there. As you can see, the Chicago market, the Wisconsin market, the upper Midwest market, the entire United States market. The market is there for early season morels after you basically have starved on root vegetables, no greens all winter long. The chefs are looking to have something especially fresh as well as fungal to have on their menus very early season in March. The Chinese morel season predates us by roughly 1 to 1.5 months. You can jumpstart the entire season. And it's an alternative dormant season crop for a lot of people that don't really have anything going on within greenhouses. If you already have greenhouses on your setting, it's a niche specialization. And again, this is all meant to basically continue a knowledge base, to continue dialogue and create more fun, more learning within the mushroom cultivation context. just reiterating, this is a 3-season presentation. We are going to be doing 2.0, hopefully for fall, and presenting at Fungi Fair. And then we'll be doing a fruiting session where we will actually hopefully have a fruitful outing in spring 2025 and have a vacation out there, out on the farm. So while nothing will compete with the romance of foraging for morels in the spring, hopefully in the future we can see an entirely new specialty crop industry in Wisconsin that still gives us a little bit of a rush every time that we see one. And that is the morel I picked off of I-43 off of Silver Spring Road right underneath the bridge that was 23 inches tall. So thank you guys so much for letting me talk, and I'm open for questions.
Whew. Thank you, Mike. We've
That was a-
had a lot of kind of like applause and OMG and
Yeah.
wow and so on in the chat.
Mike,
So
why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen so we can like see the full panel of participants? Thank you so much. Okay, so now we can all just kind of talk as a group.
yeah.
There's a lot of questions in the comments, and Mariah has volunteered to take us through all of this. But first of all, I just wanted to say, Mike, what a fantastic presentation, and the work, buddy, that you have put into this, the research that you have done, the science that has gone into it is astounding, and it's very amazing and respectable. And we as a group are so excited about what you're doing and the fact that you're sharing it with our people, and you know that it doesn't have to be like a secret anymore, because I feel like it's kind of been that way for a long time.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you know, people are online trying to sell morel kits to people, and you know that doesn't work.
Yes.
But this, you know, sort of process is something that might be able to be scaled down into people's yards or something eventually.
Absolutely.
And you know, you might even be a part of that, like selling like, you know, like multi-step kits that you can actually follow and, you know, get good results and that kind of stuff. So I just want to say thank you first and
Absolutely.
foremost. I think that is very important because of just the amount of work that you have done. Because remember, everyone who's watching this isn't just him putting together an hour presentation for us. This is also all of the work that he's going to have to do on the farm and the field trip that we're going to do, and then 2 more presentations and all of this other stuff. So this is a real labor of love. A real labor of love. So with that said, Mariah, if you want to take away with the questions, thanks.
Yeah, sure. I started collecting them out of the chat from the beginning. If someone, however, really needs to leave and hasn't asked their question yet, you can either put in the chat that you want me to ask theirs earlier, or unmute yourself and just interrupt me and be like, hey, please, I need to go. So that being said, I'm going to start with this question from Melissa Olson. Mike, do you have your own morel variety?
We do not yet. I cloned a number of local morels. I've cloned a number of Pacific Northwest morels. We, as much as I want to say that I'm versed in culture and in terms of morel culturing and agar and the lab work, I think I'm adequate, probably B plus. But I am going to heavily rely on people that are far better. As much as I love growing mushrooms, there's people that nerd out even harder on simply growing the cultures, and I would much rather trust a professional that is far more invested in that than me trying to do it myself, especially in terms of trying to get this grant rolling versus constantly trying to find and select the exact culture I want.
Okay. The next question is by James Brake, and it's, how does the flavor compare to wild?
So pre-2024, no one wanted cultivated morels. No one wanted Chinese. No one wanted heavy metal morels. No one wanted China morels. Like you think of every racist comment you could possibly imagine, and then somehow on a axis of an alternate reality in 2024, everyone wanted Chinese morels. I really can't understand it. For me, you are not going to beat the terroir, the earthy flavor of a beautiful blonde or gray morel that you pick in the wild. The flavor context is there, but then again, that is an entirely different experiential realm that we can get into in terms of taste testing, which I absolutely want to explore if we can get this going here on the farm. But for me personally, there is definitely a flavor differential. But again, most of the applications that I saw from the obsessive nature of using Chinese morels this year was for stuffing them. So you're really not tasting the mushroom. You're not pan frying a mushroom. You're not pan frying a Chinese morel versus a local morel within that context. But I would say there definitely is a flavor discrepancy, and you're going to get a more meaty texture. I would say the cap density and the cap texture is less meaty in a cultivated Chinese morel at present than our local morels.
Well, and that's very interesting because that could, that could definitely be down to, like you said, the terroir, or like the dirt it's grown in, and maybe
Exactly.
relationships with the trees and how long it's had to like go through its full life cycle instead of being kind of a relative baby.
Yeah.
Um, but it could also be maybe something to do with the strain, you
Yep.
know. So that's really cool. Next question was also Melissa Olson, and it's, can we manipulate temperatures in an inside environment to be able to get them to fruit in alternate seasons?
That is what the Danish Morel Project and the Karstens and Far West Fungi in San Francisco, as well as the Mycopia, are trying to do right now. So they're trying to do year round. But the thing with inside morel cultivation is you still need to create a dorm. I The one thing I don't understand within that context of outside versus indoor morel cultivation is you still have to create a sclerotum mat. Are you literally taking and creating that sclerotum mat, which normally overwinters? You have to have a wintering cycle. Are they creating these inside tubs and trays and then freezing them, perhaps to create simulate that environment, and then creating a out of dormancy phase through temperature variances and raising the temperature slowly inside? That's something I'm not as familiar with in terms of indoor versus outdoor cultivation. But I just the labor process. Someone recently, just as soon as they heard that we were presenting on WMS, sent me a research paper in terms of the hours spent for morel cultivation, of which I opened it and I said there is none because it's a labor of love at this point. You cannot quantify hours spent per morels gleaned per acre at this point within an upper Midwest context. Um, but Man, I couldn't imagine inoculating that many trays and bringing them inside and moving the soil and constantly creating trays to bring inside. It just seems so exponentially much more labor than normal versus an outside context.
Okay, that does make definitely some sense when I think about the details involved in that indoor temperature control. You would almost want that like computer controlled.
It
Um,
and that for a lot of mushroom cultivators, they take all of their old bags and they throw them outside and create this giant heap of compost. And when you're gleaning and starting to move all this compost around, you just see this compost pile producing some of the best mushrooms you've ever seen in your life. And you're just so pissed that you're just realizing that nature, no matter what you do, is always going to do it better than you could possibly synthesize within an indoor environment. And you just have to laugh every single time. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars creating this mushroom inside cultivation facility, and you throw it into a shit pile, and all of a sudden you're getting the best looking mushrooms you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, that also brings up who knows how many like associates, whether they're bacteria or,
Yeah.
you know, who knows what's going on. Um, so next question in my list is by someone who's only identified by the name owner, probably like a phone name. If you'd like to identify yourself, feel free. But the question was, are there any safety concerns with producing morels this way?
With how much research already has been done in the industry, I would think that we are approaching billions of Chinese yuan invested within the cultivation industry. I would think the major concerns would be just soil quality that you're growing them outside in. I would not be so concerned about that actual strains or creating some sort of toxic subvariant within the Morchella clade, because you're not diving into geometry or anything like that. I would say it's more so the quality of the soil would be your number one um, point of contention.
I
Right.
agree. I think that like we also, I mean, we have to remember the reason behind Mike saying like you need to have an area that is clean of any sort of pesticides or herbicides for like a good 5 years is because mushrooms can bioaccumulate that kind of material. So you need to have very, very clean soil that's like essentially organic
Yeah.
soil in order to, grow mushrooms that are like very good, safe, and not bioaccumulating of any chemicals of any kind, which is also why we tell you don't hunt mushrooms next to railroad tracks because they spray defoliants there,
Arsenic.
and that would be a dangerous thing to consume. Other than that, guys, the only other like really warning we can always give you, and this is something that we're going to hammer home every single time we talk about morels, is you need to cook your morels thoroughly, always, always, because they
The
are
number
toxic. They are not cooked.
I just cannot believe the story. I was guaranteed when they came out of that story in 2023 out of Montana that that lady had eaten an undercooked morel. I just couldn't believe it. And then I was convinced it was a Chinese morel that came from contaminated soils, or it was some sort of early season geometria, and it DNA sequence came out as a true morel. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, there are, I think, as of yet, unidentified, or if they are identified, it's in a paper I haven't read, toxins in all morels that toxin or toxins in all morels that are heat sensitive. So the moment you cook them properly, like fully, like you should get some caramelization on that or bake it thoroughly, um, they're gone. But you undercook or don't cook.
Spain 2023 too. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was 3 or 4 people that died from undercooked morels in Spain.
Yeah. It is something that I would encourage anybody sharing them, especially. It's the moment where you're like, you have them and you have the knowledge and you give them to somebody, you sell them to somebody that other somebody maybe doesn't know. Be sure to like include the card. um, yeah, so just to move to the next question, um, Melissa Olson had asked, is Wisconsin involved with research? And I think that's yes, you are.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I just had a professor or some sort of research student from UW-Madison Research reach out to me in regards to his experimentation hybridized strains. We're going to reconnect and hopefully connect some UW biological research with us as well.
okay, that's good to know. Um,
Yeah. But I mean, us as a club or whatever,
Exactly.
when Mike came to us and said, I would like to partner with you on this, like we were really excited to get to, sort of be, we're, marginally involved, but we're still involved. Like our name was on the grant as like a partner. And we're really proud to be part of this initiative with him and, to get people to learn more about this because it is, I mean, for most people anyway, like, yeah, the Chinese have been doing this for a while, but here in the States, this is cutting edge for us. So we're really proud that Wisconsin is part of that, and that Mike is like the person that's pioneering this and leading us to this. Like we're really proud to be a part of.
Well, if there was a focus group to be focused on, I think we have a pretty great focus group with the Wisconsin Mycological Society for sure.
Yeah, we are focused. Somebody actually is jumping right. Specifically, Denise Pelkovich asked, I could see us doing this here on our 11.5 acres someday. Where can we buy the kit?
No kits yet. Again, I'm not here to profit off of Morel research. We have the capability of producing this. I'm going to make it available whenever we do get these hybridized strains from China and be able to inoculate at cost. Whatever it takes for me to produce it, I'll sell it at cost. I'm not going to create $85 Morel kits where there has been some incredible market gouging and very shady business happening regarding Morel kits that I will not get into online. As you can see, why I wanted to walk through this process, you're getting these Morel kits pitched to you, but you're leaving out steps 4 and 5 of a 6-step process, and people are just wasting money on stuff that doesn't need to be spent on.
Yeah, and and there's like a big thing on when you buy it, it's like there's no guarantee of fruition or whatever. And it's like, what? Okay, I can buy
Sure.
mycelium. That is what you're saying. Okay, great. That's not exactly what people usually want. But so many people don't know that, though. Yeah.
Well, the guarantee is that it's guaranteed. They guarantee vitality.
Exactly.
That doesn't guarantee a fruiting body.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to join late. I had another meeting, but
Absolutely.
Mike, I feel bad that I missed it. I'll have to watch the YouTube.
We'll do another one for you, buddy.
How about tomorrow morning?
Sure.
Okay, personal meetings, which you can request with Mike, which I did also drop your email in the chat for people, and they can also go to your website to get to like a contact if they're interested in that too.
Asked, do you need volunteers on your farm for the project?
We are always looking for able helping hands for sure. If there's one thing that I learned after having 2 kids and then trying to create a mushroom business that was actually profitable is you cannot do it all yourself and you must rely on qualified hands to help you. Yes. I think this trying to figure out exactly how this fall field trip will work in conjunction with Fungi Fair in the second presentation will be interesting, but we definitely need to, especially with the grant protocols, have people on site and show this exact process of how it's actually working in the soil. So we'll negotiate that field for sure.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to jump to maybe an easy one from Jeremy Hooper, which is, what is milkshaking exactly?
Milkshaking, as in reference to Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, in which he says that regardless of any plot of land that you own, I will be able to drop a pipeline in and extract the oil from underground. Just like the Morel's mycelium, once you create that sclerotia mat and you introduce those exogenous nutritional bags, they will seek out, and that's the most mind-boggling part. It's very sentient that they will be able to literally go up into something that's fallen on the ground, suck the nutrients out, and then be able to bring that back down, create a stronger sclerotia mat to create that massive fruiting body. So that's kind of what I'm alluding to, how they suck the nutrients out of the exogenous nutritional bags.
So this kind of leads in, actually. So first of all, thank you for the clarification. Also the imagery.
I think that was a different Jeremy, but I appreciate the
I'm so sorry.
description
It
as
said
well.
Jeremy H, I thought, but yeah, there's more than one Jeremy H now. But this kind of leads into a follow-up from Denise, who had asked about like, oh, are you perhaps have kits? She said, Morels already grow here. Perhaps we can just feed ours. I guess the question in that would be, how viable would that be? Like if I wanted to take some cheesecloth and wrap it around Morel food and drop it near my favorite trees.
I guess it never hurts researching. It obviously happened in China by an accident, so I have no idea. I've never even really thought about that, but that might be worth exploring. Like I thought that question was gonna be alluding to dumping washed morel spores into an elm grove. But actually dropping exogenous nutritional bags into a thriving morel patch would be quite interesting.
Yeah, I would
Agreed.
definitely encourage people, I'll just say I'll encourage people to think about if they're gonna try that, do it with something that will biodegrade
Yeah.
eventually. Like, don't
Yeah.
be just
Um,
chucking plastic out there.
Related question from Haley and Neil, and it says, does the exogenous nutrient bag simulate the mycorrhizal association to trees? And I would assume it would have to be something like that because, they said that like live ash and dying elm are like two places where you find a lot of morels, that's where you're supposed to look or whatever. But like a lot of times dying trees are known to like send out, there's like an intelligence within the tree and that knows it's dying and it's like trying to send its nutrients to its progeny around it when it's dying so that it like makes its offspring as healthy as possible. And that's actually like a theory for why mushrooms can grow so prolifically around dying trees sometimes is because they have that like last burst of nutrients and then
Yeah.
the mushrooms fruit from that. So it might be something kind of similar to that. Mike, what is in these exogenous nutrient bags anyway?
So it's exactly like what you inoculate with morel spores. It's a variant of um I've seen gypsum in them before, but the basic logistics is some sort of a wood byproduct, some sort of an agricultural byproduct. In China, they heavily rely on rice bran hulls, and they literally have the entire formula that I can share with you, like the entire chart of exactly what's inside of these bags. But basically, a wood byproduct, an agricultural byproduct, sometimes gypsum to hold them together. It creates a more uniform brick that doesn't just deteriorate so rapidly. And then that's hydrated and then slit, and then that's what's put on top of the soil. But otherwise, you would inoculate that with the morel mycelium to create the log that you then either till into the soil or you put soil on top of.
Gypsum offers three benefits. One being the caking ingredient, as you said, to hold it together. Also, it adds sulfur and calcium, which is going to strengthen mycelial growth. It makes a hardier strand, we'll say. And it also raised the pH up to something that a mushroom can tolerate a little bit better. So you can see pHs up even in excess of 10.
And that's why we have Tavis here to help me with those.
Yeah, and there's also a recent comment from Randy Strobel, a question that I think Tavis and everybody else will discuss. So you said, Randy said, the methods you discussed suggest that morels are saprobes in cultivation. Are they mycorrhizal in the wild?
I can speak on that if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Tavis has his thought about this, and I don't know. You're going to say they're not mycorrhizal at all.
No,
I'll
I'm going to
feed
say
off
at the fruiting stage, all of them are saprobic.
Yeah.
Okay, that is
All
a different.
27 species of North American morel are saprobic at the time of fruiting.
Okay.
At their vegetative state, there's a little bit of debate there. But they're certainly not mycorrhizal with the trees that they're hosting with because elm, ash, and apple trees, great morel hosts, are all endomycorrhizal trees not supporting ectomycorrhizal fungi. So if
I can't
mycorrhizal
disagree.
with something else, if it's mycorrhizal.
I think you got to have a perfect cocktail to be able to call it a martini. So I think when it's the perfect combination of the right nutrients at the right time in the right place, it's hard to disagree with that because, again, how else do you explain rogue patches and no association of trees whatsoever?
Saprobic get fruiting. It might have a dual life cycle, but I think there's a little mystery surrounding that developmental stage. And we're actually seeing a lot of benefits to October rains for spring morels.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's that telling you?
I always thought it was telling me that it was helping the trees, but
The trees are in dormancy in October.
all right. So what is it telling me if I had the correct thought about this?
So, Mike, have you ever gotten a chance to taste any of the like cultured grown morels yet, or
Oh yeah. Oh
is
yeah.
it still, yeah? And
Oh,
what do you think about like is it pretty much the same as no?
I
Okay.
literally waited a week and a half for the one beautiful morel in my yard to get to the perfect size so I could fry it up because I knew that that was peak optimal texture versus a cultivated morel. You look
Yeah.
at them, they're so damn pretty when you open that styrofoam box and you're just like, how could these all look the same? And it's a gorgeous looking mushroom, but I just think that the texture is a little bit suspect and the terroir is just a little bit suspect, that you're just not getting as earthy of a texture. But again, a lot of these people are using them specifically this year for stuffing, because
Mm.
of the longer stipe, the longer tube.
Yeah.
It's the cultivated varietal was perfect for stuffing versus local morels.
They were 3D
Do you
printed.
think that
Yes.
Oh my god.
do you think that next year your morels are going to be superior in as far as flavor and the
I sure
genetics that
hope.
you have?
I really hope it works. The one major thing that everyone's like, oh, that's all fake, that's all fake. And I'm just like, it's fake because you're not putting the absurd amount of OCD and ADHD effort into actually making this process viable on your own property. And it's
Yeah.
an absurd amount of capital investment to even experiment with, in terms of the scale that we want to on our property. Obviously can be scaled down. But it's worth it because I love the science behind it.
That kind of leads into, I think, the last question I have from the chat, and then I get to ask my question, is how many acres max would one want to try working at one time, from Melissa Olson?
Oh boy. Um, you're talking hundreds, if not thousands of acres for some of these complexes in right outside the Tibetan Plateau. They call some of these specifically more beautiful dark cultivated morels Gucci morels, as well as Tibetan Highland. You come up with every pot strain name you could possibly think of that they call these things. But the acreage is insane in China in terms of how much investment that you could put into it. I would probably say if you're an average farmer that has, we have, what do we have? 24 by 36-foot greenhouses times three. That is going to be three full-time people for at least 40 to 60 hours every 2 weeks to be able to prep site and get that in the ground, and then again in spring to water, harvest, and maintain throughout the season. You're talking an unbelievable amount of man hours, woman hours, man hours, farmer hours in order to get what you're looking for. I would probably say that you would want to start reasonably small with a 24 by 30-foot greenhouse if we were going to begin experimenting with this, before scaling up and doing associative experiments with other types of like cultivation tweaks like we're going to be doing.
Okay. Um, that is a lot, as you were saying. There are actually a couple more questions in the chat, and I'll ask those before I ask mine because mine's kind of involved. So first was, so if cultivated morels aren't quite as tasty, is that true with all cultivated mushrooms?
No.
Huh.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't.
Absolutely not.
No. I think there is something about a perfectly cultivated shiitake, especially some of the other beautiful subvariant strains that have come out in the last couple of years, some of these shiitake strains are just some of the best tasting mushrooms I've ever tasted in my entire life. Oyster mushrooms are just continually being grown. You saw the black pearl come to fame, which is a cross strain between a king trumpet and a black oyster mushroom. There's new ones getting developed all the time. I would say that it I would say our lion's manes versus wild lion's manes are pretty hard to beat in terms of flavor. There's a lot of other cultivated mushroom strains that I would say are far superior, especially in the cleaning process. That's a
Yeah.
large variant
Oyster mushrooms that are cultivated are just so much nicer
than
than,
worms.
than finding
The
them
worms.
wild. Yeah, they're just so much cleaner because, like otherwise, yeah, they're kind of infested when you find them out in the,
I
and
mean,
that's one of those things.
they're serving their environmental purpose. Those bugs love them.
Has anyone really found an unbelievable quantity of worms in golden oysters?
No, so that's
No.
actually one of the concerns. That's one of the concerns that makes them more likely to be like a true invasive species that's impact. If it outcompetes our native, we're going to see
It's
bug species go down. We're going to see,
very
Yeah.
fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I like golden oysters so much is that they're so clean because there's
So
no
clean.
native insects here that like recognizes and loves them the way
But
that they do the
then
other native ones.
shitty lining on that thing of silver. That's also
Yeah.
why it's an environmental hazard.
Yeah,
One
it's
of the
unfortunate.
reasons. I just
Um,
read one paper about how it also seems to be depressing, like just other wood rotting Wisconsin species or Midwest species that just can't.
yeah.
And the question is, for how long?
So just as a last note on that, as far as like cultivated mushrooms, though, I have heard that people say oftentimes that for whatever reason, cultivated maitake isn't quite as good as wild maitake. And I think that's a preference thing for people. But I would say most often, like also enoki in the store is not quite the same as like flammulina
No.
when you find it like in the woods.
Absolutely not.
But I think that there's like a personal preference that comes into play for this. And I think
Yeah.
that like sometimes cultivated mushrooms are a lot better in some ways, and sometimes finding things in the woods are a little better in some ways or whatever. So I mean, I think it just depends on the scenario, and we celebrate all mushrooms here at WMS.
You're missing a much easier example. How about grocery store agaricus mushrooms versus wild agaricus mushrooms? That's night and day. I just saw a question pop up too on wine caps. Wine caps are not native to the United States, so who knows there? That's a European mushroom that was introduced.
Mm-hmm. And so before I go on to maybe a couple of the last questions, Mike put the survey into the chat. If you are here, please click that link
Please
and
click it. Yeah.
go fill out that survey. You can click that link and hold it until we're done and fill it out, or you can do it right now while we're talking, but fill it out.
2 minutes tops, literally timed it. It's very simple, yes or no's.
And it will really help, I'm assuming, with your compliance with your grant. Yeah, proving that we've done this,
Yes.
among other forms of proof. So one of the last questions I saw in the chat was, I wonder if shipping time, distance traveled from China affects taste too. Seems like there could be a more sustainably minded market for locally cultivated Wisconsin morels. So that's kind of a question and an idea.
No, it's all overnighted. Like you can,
Yeah.
Go is so advanced now. You can get anything anywhere in the world overnight. So you're
Unless
taking
going up at that elevation is affecting it.
No,
Yeah, but when
I,
Mike sends us all his, he'll have something special from Wisconsin type of
For
product,
test,
and we
yeah.
all
there you go.
those little
It is
Wisconsin
it
things.
is true also, like the sustainability angle of, okay, these are grown here, they don't need to be, putting out those air mile,
Oh, for sure.
wastage
Yeah.
will definitely be a thing. And obviously from a labor rights standpoint, just knowing that, at least in long as somebody's not being illegal, it will be following
Yeah,
that
if you
as
watch
well.
that YouTube video that we heavily used in terms of screenshotting, it was pretty disturbing.
Now, I do want to say, just for, because we've definitely had pictures of like kids picking mushrooms, and somebody could construe it that way. Like,
Yeah,
it could hypothetically, I guess, be just somebody's kid, but
sure.
depends on the context. I haven't seen the video. But yeah, there are definitely papers out there about labor issues around
Yeah.
the world. My question, which I think last chance for someone else to ask a question instead of me. But okay, mine's kind of a downer pattern with me about kind of the environmental questions on things.
I think we've discussed this before. Go ahead.
We may have. And it's just, I'm still kind of on this, like, who is doing, I know Anne Pringle is a great, Dr. Anne Pringle at UW-Madison. She's a researcher who focuses on, among other things, the potential for invasiveness on mushroom
Yep.
strains and mushroom species. Has anyone been asked to evaluate the potential, the risk level, the environment, and then also the hypothetical environmental output, impact?
Mm.
Or is that something we could do? Like, ask her to look into it, or
So right now, I'm sure Tavis can contribute to this as well in terms of the exhaust systems. If you think of how many mushroom cultivation operations there are within a localized context, yet alone just Wisconsin, just the volume you're literally paying to environmentally condition the outside. You're dumping spore-laden air outside nonstop. How much that is contributing towards these species being introduced to the natural environment when you think of the millions of spores that Morel, like a single Morel can dump. It is definitely something to consider. Um, in terms of invasiveness, I think it's a very valid point. If you just look at the golden oyster mushrooms, like, is this going to be the new state mushroom? Besides, are we going to have an asterisk next to this besides the hen of the woods mushrooms, where all of a sudden this is just overtaken everything? I think it's definitely something to have a pause for concern.
yeah, I do think it's something that maybe we could at least kind of ask the question, even as we're experimenting, and look at it. And it would be also one of those things where I'm really excited about the potential of, what would our Morchella americana strain, like something off of that, be
Yeah,
doing? And that
absolutely.
might be maybe less of a risk factor. I don't know. It may be better. Yeah. At the same time, I don't want to like act like every single, there's a huge difference, for example, with plants. For me, putting a mint plant just out in the garden, and that'll go rogue.
Yeah.
And if I put out like a non-native blueberry cultivar from Europe, I'm gonna have to fight to get that one blueberry plant to live. It's not gonna go mint. So I think this is a concern here, but that's mostly like why I would love to talk more about like how to add in that kind of
Absolutely.
like assessment. Thank you so much for your answer on that.
Yeah.
So with escapees, I can just speak with a little bit of experience here. I've been cultivating oysters since the early 1990s outdoors with zero escape. Shiitake I started growing in probably 2004 or 2005, roughly, we'll say. And on my 13 acres that I've cycled through growing, I have seen two naturalized shiitake mushrooms on my property
Hmm.
the entire time. And they were
And
both growing on small twigs. very clearly shiitake on the twigs of my white oaks that I have there. It's wine caps. I've seen them pop up here and there, but they're very spindly and thin, and they kind of fade away. It's kind of an Easter egg hunt for a couple years, and then they just go away. The golden oyster is very unique in its ability to
Aggression.
spread as it has. So it's as
Yeah.
far north as me right now, which is 300 miles north of the initial, or 250 anyway, of the initial sightings of golden oyster. So that is a bit of a mystery there, and it is concerning. But as far as anything else that's commercially cultivated, no, it's pretty low risk at this point so far.
Yeah,
So-
there are some ways to try and predict who's going to do what. A lot of it in Dr. Pringle's papers seems to be like down to the reproductive side of it. And then the other thing is just like, golden oysters, they can grow in pretty much anything. As opposed to like if it's something that you're having to baby to get it to fruit at all, that's
Yeah.
much less likely an event. The other thing that I do think that, just while we're chatting about this, I think that some of these events could be tied to other invasives. So that could be, a bug like Melissa Klaka and Rose Tercy brought up what if the golden oyster outbreak coincided with the emerald ash borer spread. There's some compelling evidence if you look at emerald ash borer on iNaturalist and the map of the golden oysters.
That's the creation of dead tissue, though.
Yeah.
So
Well, but that's still what I mean. Like, even if it's not like literally it requires this bug, that's one type of hypothesis. But I'm even saying just like, you never know when the perfect conditions hit. Everything's been fine, and then
without human interaction, the emerald ash borer travels at a distance of about 1/2 mile per year.
so
The
that
oyster,
would,
without human interaction, has spread 300 miles in 2 directions in 7 years.
But certainly the emerald ash borer has been spreading pretty fast with human interaction, and that's also part of the.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
the golden oyster is not spreading with human interaction as much. It certainly is. People are selling furniture with golden oysters growing out of it.
Yeah, we've seen.
It's true.
It's
we've
true.
seen it here.
Absolutely.
But it's spore dispersal. That's
Yeah.
that's the fastest
Yeah.
way that it's going. And when each fruiting body produces close to 1 billion spores, and you have 2,500 fruiting bodies on one large chunk of dead ash, wow, that's an astronomical number.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very prolific and gregarious and
I-
delicious.
I do feel pretty secure in the idea that probably these Morel species won't. Just don't love probably. Yeah, it's also it's really interesting when we talk about this strain thing and crossing. Is that something that happens in a petri dish?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it something that is pretty reliable, or is it really difficult, or does that vary?
Yeah.
1 in 1,000.
Okay.
Yep. You find a good bond.
I was gonna say, Mike, if you need someone to sequence your mushrooms when they do start growing, let us know. Because
Absolutely.
we will be having a sequencing program by then. So yeah, we
We
can
could
give you a
also
specific genetic name.
voucher it maybe and get it in the
Wisconsin
museum.
Morchella, Wisconsin Mycologicus. Yeah.
Right. Can you imagine the amount of iNaturalist observations we could get on his property when things start?
That's
All
how you
the
win the
same
projects, friends.
thousands of times.
Yeah, you'd have to mark it cultivated, but I allow that in the project, so it works. Yeah, did anybody else have any questions? You could put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay, not really hearing any, though somebody could be typing. Oh. No, we just kind of had a discussion about which inky caps cause problems.
Well,
chat.
Mike,
So,
thank
should-
you
that's-
so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, and for answering all these questions, and for being available,
don't-
like doing this in an educational way. Like,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. What it's all about.
Yeah. So for those of you who found this fascinating and helpful and informative, as Mike said, the second part of his presentation is going to be happening on, was it October 13th that we said Fungi Fair was? I forget.
believe so, yeah.
I think
Yes.
so. Yes.
It's the
October
13th.
So that's going to be at the Polish Community Center in Franklin, Wisconsin, which is near to Milwaukee. So come out and see Mike do his second part of his presentation.
Yeah.
And then we'll let our members know about how we can, get people signed up for the
Field trip.
outing,
Yeah.
to his place. And then, the spring presentation this upcoming year about, 2025, about like what the results are and all that other stuff. And, I can't wait to
Right.
get all of the information out there
It'll
and
be exciting
let
for
people
sure.
know how everything went. Yeah, it really is. So, this is something that, oh my gosh, when did we start working on this? Like
2019.
2022? Was it 19? Oh my God, it's so
19.
long ago already.
I wrote the initial
But-
one in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's something that we've been kind of like secretly doing behind the scenes or whatever together to like try to get all this stuff scheduled and whatever, but we're very excited to continue the educational series on this and to let you guys know what the results of all of his hard work have been. So stay tuned for more.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, well, have a good night, everyone. We appreciate you joining.
Take care.
Yep. Have that
Bye.
survey.
Yeah, do the survey,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Do it now.